For the session today, we have with us Shri Anil Jauhri, the former CEO of the National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies, a constituent board of the Quality Council of India, and the National Accreditation Body for Certification and Inspection attached to the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. He has most recently been nominated as a member of the newly created Naturopathy Registration Board by the Ministry of Ayush. He has more than 40 years of experience in the field of quality, standards, certification and accreditation, having worked earlier in the Bureau of Indian Standards and the Export Inspection Council of India. Shri Anil Jauhri has been instrumental in designing several certification schemes in India, like the Indian Certification of Medical Devices Scheme, INDGAP, Ayush Mark, to name a few. He's been a member of the UNFCCC's CDM Accreditation Panel since 2007. Joining him today, our second distinguished speaker is Dr. Murali Kallummal, a professor at the Center for WTO Studies. He has more than 20 years of experience in the areas of market access issues in agriculture and manufacturing sectors, SPS, TBT, trade and development issues, and trade and environment, to name a few. He has conceived and maintains an official web portal with 2 databases on non-tariff measures. The database is unique as it provides trade linkage at HS 4-digit level for all the SPS and TBT notifications made to the WTO by the 164 countries. The Government of India has nominated Dr. Kallummal to WTO's official training programs, and Dr. Kallummal has been interacting with several institutions domestically and internationally on developmental challenges emerging from the negotiations under the WTO nowadays. I would request both our speakers to kindly take the session forward.
Good evening. Anil Jauhri ji does not require any introduction. He's a man, I've known of him since 2014, but he predates even before 2014. When I got to know. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So we have with us a giant in standard making and pattern-making assessment procedures and technical evaluation. So we should use this 1 hour, which will be with us, fruitfully. We should clear all our doubts, and and I will request Anil Jauhri ji to, as an introduction, to introduce the subject to the audience. Thank you.
So good afternoon to everybody. I would like to thank Center for WTO Studies and Department of Commerce for inviting me to this event and taking a session with you and reconnecting with Eric, who I have known since 2013 when I first attended a program like this as a resource person organized in India, where Eric had come. And then subsequently I met him in Geneva a couple of times. So that's very nice to have reconnected. Thank you very much for that opportunity. In fact, I have to remind Eric, please remember when he comes back, I should remind him. Twice he invited me over to WTO in 2013 and 2015. Each time he offered that I could stay for 2 weeks and attend the whole program rather than being a resource. And each time I had to tell you, no, I'm so busy, I can't spend 15 days in Geneva. So I just spent 2 days or 3 days and came back. Now I want to tell him that now I am free enough to spend 2 weeks in Geneva. All right. So the session that I have been given is about TBT measures in challenges for Indian private sector. And I believe there are hardly any private sector people here. So they should have been telling us what are the challenges they are facing. And you heard all about TBT agreement in the last 3 days, and I was seeing the sum up which was done. We face challenges as a country and as private sector, because largely industry which is affected by TBT measures on several fronts. And we are still, frankly, a bit too slow to respond and come up with the levels that we need to be on, including our technical organization, I'm sorry to say. The first thing which is a challenge for our industry is the fact that we have a huge deficit of technical regulations. I mean, Europe is way ahead in regulating its products and we are way behind. Somewhere the figure was quoted once upon a time 15% of Europe, maybe it's increased now. Last 5 years there have been a lot of regulations, but still we are behind developed countries in terms of having technical regulations in place. We are partially regulated on chemicals, we are partially regulated on medical devices, we do not have yet the regulation on machinery safety. So the first challenge our industry faces is, and it was most, vividly exemplified during the COVID crisis when our textile industry responded brilliantly to the demand for PPEs, and we became from a net importer to an aspiring exporter. But the problem was there were no regulations in India on PPEs, so anything goes. You would never be sure what you were wearing in terms of masks, etc., etc. And the moment they started to export or wanted to export, they suddenly realized that all these PPEs are under regulation everywhere. Now you have a new problem. Now you have to meet those regulations, you have to get the regulatory approval. We have lab, we did not have a lab for N95 masks. For first 1 year, we did not have an independent lab for testing in N95 masks. Even if you are producing, how do you test? So the cost of testing outside, etc., etc. So the first problem is that a large part of our industry is used to no regulation, and then it finds a challenge when it runs into regulation elsewhere, naturally, because you're not used to standards and regulations. That's the first part. Second challenge to me is that many of our regulations are actually based on not on international standards. You heard Eric tell you that WTO agreements encourage, they don't bind you, but they encourage that you adopt international standards in your regulations. Unfortunately, that is not the case. In most cases, that is not the case. I mean, we may be the pharmacy of the world, but our pharma regulation does not yet adopt WHO TBT, for example. There are few standards, few areas where we have international standards. For example, toys are international standards adopted by BIS. Hallmarking grades are international standards, but we'll talk about that further. So that's the second challenge that you will face, that our standards are not international. And I mean, I think it's unfortunate that I still hear voices from important fora who say we should have India-specific standards. And I would like to narrate a real-life incident to you to press this point. One day, when I was in service, I was CEO of NABCB, as you have been told, which is part of Quality Council of India. One day, we received a call from DPIIT that there is a Swedish delegation meeting Secretary DPIIT, and you please be present in the meeting. So, Secretary General QCI, currently still Secretary General, Dr. Singh, and I, we went to DPIIT, and we are ushered into the visiting room. And then we saw the Swedish delegation walking, the ambassador, their negotiator in WTO, and one more person. After some time, they were told that yes, you can come in and meet Secretary DPIIT. That was Amitabh Khan. He didn't ask us, but we tagged along. We realized that we have come for this meeting only, we tagged along. As we entered, I could see on Amitabh Khan's face a sort of quizzical look. Who are these guys coming in? Fortunately, he didn't tell us, who are you and please stay out. So we went in and sat down. The meeting started, no reference to us. We were sitting on the side. No reference to us. So I'm sure Amitabh Khan didn't realize why we were sitting there. But he was polite enough not to tell us to leave. Then the Swedish side started. Point number 1, point number 2. Point number 3 said standards. The moment he uttered the word standards, struck Secretary. Oh, that's why these guys are here. So then he introduced us. He said, oh, this is Dr. RPC, this is Anil Jauhri, and they are from Quality Council. On standard, the Swedish side told Secretary DPIIT that, when you are making regulations, if you don't make regulations to international standards, we will not be interested in investment. Because when we invest here, we would like to get the product made here and take it back to our country. And he gave example of Mexico and Brazil, saying that how Brazil was inward looking and was making its own standards, whereas Mexico was open, and therefore the more investment to given into Mexico. So Secretary said, but our commerce ministry is telling us that we should have Indian standards. At this point, I interjected because I was interacting very heavily with commerce at the time. I said, I'm sorry, sir, commerce is not saying that. Commerce is saying that you adopt international standards. He kept quiet, the meeting went on. After the meeting, he asked us to stay back. And he asked me, now please explain again to me what is this issue of standards. So I told him, I said, simple. If your regulations are not based on international standards, A, you don't get easy access to the other country because most countries have adopted international standards. And B, they don't have problem accessing your market because standards are lower than international standards. So if I can meet international standard, I can meet any lower standard. So both ways we are suffering. Then he said, but we have taken a decision on file to the contrary. I said, I'm sorry, then you have taken a wrong decision. Because you should be saying, my view is that we should have a default thinking, we adopt international standards. We meet international standards, we adopt international standards. Not only that, I have been twice in ISO committees, I have been in Codex committees, I have attended those meetings. I can tell you from personal experience that the international standards are not the international best practice as they are touted to be. They are actually the most commonly accepted practice. Because of that principle of consensus which was talked about here. That everybody has to agree in the room. In that room, 60 people are sitting. As long as somebody is saying, no, I don't agree, you go on arguing, go on discussing, and go on diluting that to suit that, okay, everybody agrees. Now, in WTO, he said that consensus means everybody has to agree. In ISO, it doesn't say so. In fact, they defined consensus, I'm sure some people who BIS are here, they defined consensus as 60% or 70% people agree. But most of the time, no voting takes place, usually in these committees. Show of hands just take place. So even in the committees that I attended, the divergence of view, they said, okay, let's have a show of hands. And an informal kind of voting did take place. And if majority was in favor of something, okay, let's go. So that much happens. So to me, that's the second challenge that we are facing, that most of our regulations are, that's why EIC can exist. Because EIC created an alternate system of certifying to importing countries' regulations, because our own regulations were so-called substandard or below. So that's the second part. Third challenge to me is that our industry, our stakeholders, our policymakers do not really understand that it's not enough to meet regulations of the country. There is something more accessing a foreign market, and that is private standards, certifications, ISO 9001, etc., etc. In fact, last night I had a dinner with a manufacturer of furniture and handicrafts, and he told me that there is a scheme called BRICS, which was brought out by EPCH and notified by DGFT, and every exporter of wooden products has to get that BRICS certification, which means your legality is certified, that the wood is legally harvested. So that's a requirement outside, legal requirement in EU, UTR or US, whatever that regulation is. I said, is that enough? He said, no. On top of it, I have to have FSC certification. So I said, how does it help to have BRICS? He said, first time order, if I have BRICS and I tell my buyer that I have BRICS and legality certified by the government, he will accept that. He will say, okay, supply this time, but next time get FSC certification. So we have still not understood that these two are in parallel, and they are going to stay like this. That you meet the regulations of another country, and also you meet the voluntary standards demanded by the buyer, who may demand. And now a new fad has come. I call it fad because 10 years ago, I'm sure Murali would remember, we used to talk about private standards. And suddenly when SDGs came, the private standard terms changed to private sustainability standards. Yes. Everybody attached sustainability to private. They are able to show one SDG goes or the other, and it's called private sustainability standards.
They mapped it, sir.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody mapped it, and everybody claimed this is a sustainability standard. And who is going to verify that claim? No, nobody is there to verify that claim. That's
why the sustainability word has been coined along with the private standards?
Because they are private standards.
Just because.
Yeah, because they were private standards. When they found sustainability is the fashion, they attached sustainability to their own
What
standard.
they have added with each.
Yeah, it's marketing, as much marketing. Incidentally, today I happen to be part of sustainability standards world in the sense that there is a body in London which is a membership body where sustainability standards owners are members, and I am part of that, evaluating the schemes. And there is an accreditation body which is only on sustainability standards, where I am an accreditation committee member, based in Germany and based in the US. So that's the other part that we designed when I was in NABCB, we designed some industry awareness program. We talked about this repeatedly. Standards and regulations, technical regulations and standards, technical regulations, standards, because we tend to mix both of them. We have to have clarity. So that's another challenge. The fourth challenge is the capacity building. How do I meet FSC standard, FSC certification requirements? Who is going to help me meet that? I've been trying very hard for the last several years that we need somewhere a framework for certifying trainings and consultants who can help the industry, because our industry is largely MSME. MSME will never have the resources to hire full-time regulatory people. They don't have the resources. They will rely on part-time resource, which means consultants, whatever name they may have. And they don't know. Even in India, for Indian regulation, for example, last 2 years have been very tough on medical devices because the regulation is coming in. It's still in transition. The complete regulation will happen on 1st of October 2023. And the industry is struggling because there are no, I don't know which consultant, where should I go? How do I know as an industry person? I'm a small scale unit somewhere in the remote part of India. Now I am told that even toy same thing happened. And now I am told that you should comply with GAIA standards as per medical devices rules. I have no idea who will help me. We still do not have a proper system of justification. So this is another constraint our industry challenge, another industry faces. The fifth, of course, is linked to the fact that we did not have regulations. When we did not have regulations, we did not have the infrastructure. We did not have the labs. We did not have auditors. Now, if the notified body in Europe, for example, Europe uses the concept of notified bodies, third-party bodies, for several directives, medical devices, machinery safety, etc. Now, if they are going to fly in auditors from Europe to India to assess you, you can imagine the cost that's going to be. It is huge cost. Some years ago, I was trying that NABCB should enter into, they have just entered into that. I started that. Aerospace AS9100 accreditation. So when I started this exercise and went to Singapore, attended a meeting, came back to India, talked to people in Bangalore, the aerospace people, they said you need a local quality group. Unless you have a local quality group, if I have to become an accreditation body, I needed a local quality group. That local quality group was not there. I was ready, but the mechanism ecosystem was not there. Anyway, so we started that, okay, let there be an Indian national quality, it's called Aerospace Quality Group, INAQG. Then they said that, then I said, can somebody else evaluate me and approve me as an accreditation body? I would like to, because there were at that time 650 certificates for aerospace in India. 650, which is a large number. Now today that figure is 1,000. So they said, okay, talk to your Asian counterparts, Asian APQG, whatever it's called, AQG, aerospace quality. They said, no, we are busy, Japanese, Koreans. Then I talked to Europeans. Europeans said, okay, we are willing to evaluate you. We will do that. But when they sent me the budget for that, I said, my God, I don't have the money. 2 week evaluation. I was competent to face that evaluation, but I didn't have the money to. So then I said, I have to wait till.
Sir, roughly, sir, what would be the money?
I don't remember now, frankly, but it was too much. Too much money. It's like, when USFDA came up with this regulation which says third party certification can be recognized, and they said they will approve accreditation bodies. I wrote to Commerce, I said, if you give me the money, I will take the approval from USFDA. Otherwise, if you need it, please tell me, give me the money, because it's a lot of money which they are charging, which is another barrier, incidentally.
Yes, sir.
Conformity with procedure is the trickiest barrier. How it is tricky is like this. I'll give you two examples. One, of how tricky other countries make our lives, and B, how difficult we make our lives. The same example, US FDA issued a regulation, it said it will accept third-party certification, certificates coming from a third-party certification, but the accreditation body has to be approved by US FDA. So US FDA will fly out all the way to Thailand and it is approved actually. I am giving a live example. They flew out to Thailand and they approved a couple of American bodies. So that's a kind of complication that has been created rather than accept. And at that time, mind you, I told US FDA, one of the dialogues with India-US, I was part of India-US TPF for so many years, 15 to 19 till I retired. I told US FDA that your accreditation bodies in US do not have IFMLA for FSMS at that point of time, 2015 when I had FSMLA, which means I was internationally equivalent, your accreditation bodies are not. And here you are telling me that you will come and evaluate me. So they were not honoring this MLA. So this is one part of making life difficult through conformities in procedure. And we making our life difficult through conformities, I would like to, with due apologies to BIS people who are here, we have a BIS hallmarking scheme. Now at 22 karat gold or 24 karat gold or 18 karat gold is 18 karat in US also, 18 karat in Dubai also, isn't it? So we are following the same standard. Yet our hallmarking is not acceptable abroad. Why is it not acceptable? Any guesses? Can the BIS person answer that? Why is our hallmarking not acceptable? That's a very generic statement. What is not based on international standard? Is it not international standard? 18 karat purity, 22 karat purity, 24 karat. Is it not international? Everywhere is the same, purity is the same. So we have followed the international standard. But our hallmarking is not acceptable abroad. Tell me what is the reason. Think about it. BIS people, can BIS people tell me?
Assaying procedure. Assaying procedure.
Procedure? Only procedure or something else?
Assaying procedure.
Assaying procedure only or something else?
The rate cover only up to 9.
You are not from BIS. So the problem is that our assaying centers are not accredited to ISO 17025. The funny part of it all is that when we started the hallmarking scheme, and I was still in BIS way back in 1998, the hallmarking centers, the assaying centers had to go for accreditation of NABL and get 1725. Some Johnny along the way came along and he changed it, produced an Indian standard and said now assaying centers have to comply with Indian standards and BIS will evaluate them directly. With the result that we went out of international equivalence, which today is biting us, because when German Jewelry Council tells me that when our jewelry goes to England, from the airport it goes straight to Birmingham Assaying Centre first, before it can be released. And when we ask them, will it help if the assaying report is from India is accepted? There is a certainty, it will help. So what did I do? Commerce, I was engaged with Commerce till at times Commerce does consult me. I asked NABL, I actually messaged the chief of NABL, told him, do you have assaying centers accredited? Can you give me a list? He said, yes, there are about 50 assaying centers which are accredited out of, I don't know, 600, 700 odd. Somebody from BIS, can he give me a figure? How many assaying centers are actually recognized by BIS? 900 odd. Okay. So out of those 900 odd, 50 are accredited by NABL. They must have gone for accreditation for some reason. So I gave that list to Commerce and I said, please talk to UK. The dialogue is going on in India and UK. So I said, please talk to UK. Tell them that we have 50 centers which are accredited. Will you accept the assaying report from these 50 centers? Now that's making sense to UK side. So this is how conformity assessment procedure affects us also. The fact that our conformity assessment is not internationally based on international principles affects us also, our export, because you have to do additional something more later on. So for me, I will stop here, that these 4 or 5 things are the major challenges that as an industry, private sector industry faces. And since I am told that very few industry people here, but more government people, my request to them would be, you ought to become more sensitive to the needs of the industry. BIS doing away with 1725 accreditation assaying centers was a nonsense. Pardon my saying so, I am retired, I can be more blunt now. I was blunt earlier, I can be more blunt now. That was nonsense. Should never have been done. But now that you realize that this is nonsense, please switch over, sit back. What is stopping you? What is stopping you from coming back and making it international? And we have a very well-established accreditation body here. This is all the international. The problem was, as NABCB and as NABA, which are sister bodies, we had all the international equivalences, but our regulators or our ministries or our technical bodies were not, even today are not leveraging that international equivalence to the benefit of Indian industry. And Indian industry doesn't understand this, so poor fellows, they don't understand all this. So they will never raise this issue, that this is an issue, please help us get over this. So these are the 5 basic challenges I thought I would share with you. And then I'll be ready to take questions and have a discussion. It's better to have a discussion.
Sir, to start off, yes, Murali sir. Sir, you raised a very important issue of accreditation, how external bodies charge a huge price. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
See, I think Eric's WTO did a study on specific state health concerns where I reviewed that study, and what it showed was the one big takeaway which I quote all the time: 30% trade concerns are because of standards, 70% are because of conformity. Why is that so? I mean, if you are in my domain, you will understand that. It is possible to arrive at an international standard for a product, but it's not going to be possible to arrive at a single model of conformity assessment. It will never happen. It's not going to happen. Because, like Eric was saying, conformity assessment has to be risk-based. You will assess the risk of the product and decide. Europe decides that low-risk products can go on self-declaration, isn't it? We know that. We are beneficiary of that, because with self-declaration we can export our products. And high risk, you decide that you will have. I remember when I was in BIS, we used to do periodic inspections of licensed manufacturers 4 times a year. When I joined in 1980, 4 times a year. It became, due to resource crunch, twice a year, barely twice a year when I was leaving BIS, 2006, in 26 years. In between, I went to EIC for 3 years. And there I discovered every 15 days monitoring fisheries. Is it still so?
No.
Okay. Every 15 days monitoring in fisheries. Now, it was a surprise to me, but okay, I said the risk is much higher. So you're talking about shrimps, etc., exporting shrimps. So the risk-based would mean the kind of conformity procedure you pick. And therefore, there is not going to be a single conformity procedure. And if there is not going to be a single conformity procedure, there continue to be trade concerns, there will be concerns about how you are designing your procedure and how others are designing their procedure. Now, US decides that in case of food, they will assess the accreditation bodies. So in the last TPF that I attended, 2019 here, in February 2019, I was asked to talk to USTR. So the whole team was there, Commerce Secretary. So I told them, I said, let's agree on a principle. Let's agree on a principle. They were asking for acceptance test report. I think Bharat is here somewhere from my team. They have been pushing us for years on now to accept test reports for electronics and IT products, under that CRS. And we are not accepting test reports. They are saying, why don't you accept accredited test reports? I like MRS in it. So I told the USTR, I said, let's agree on a principle. What is the principle on which you want acceptance? You want acceptance on the principle that they are ILAC MRS unit. Fine. Okay, let's write down that principle and let's start applying it to cross sectors. Mighty is one, food is another. No. We are only talking about electronics and IT. We are not talking about any other sector. That is where the dialogue broke. That's it. If you are not willing to talk on a reciprocal treatment, because we don't have exports of electronics and IT products, we are not interested. But we have exports of pharma, we have exports of food, we are interested there, please accept our test report. If they don't agree, that's where it's stuck. I don't know whether post 2019 there has been any movement. I haven't attended the TPF since then, but that's where it's stuck. So that's how it is.
Thank you. The floor is open now. I think
Yeah, somebody was raising his hand.
Yeah.
Anil sir, Rashika from Vedanta. Just one clarification. As you rightly said, you told that ISMR for BS is acceptable provided it is connected with international standard. At the same time,
No, I didn't say ISMR. I just talked about all marking.
All
ISMR
marking.
is a different topic. We
Yeah,
can
in the
elaborate on that, but let's stick to all
my
marking.
question specifically is that suppose you're going for regulations for like QC was going to come into picture, quality controllers. Is the government also looking at mandate saying that all laboratories which is making a particular product has to be approved by NABCB so that your products are also internationally accepted, or it is up to the industries to decide on that?
No, I mean, if I was the one who was making regulations, of course, when you are issuing a QCO, the term is strictly under BIS Act. When you use the term QCO, you mean under BIS Act. When you mean under BIS Act, that means BIS certification or BIS registration, one of those modes. When you say that, the whole ecosystem of BIS springs into action. Part of which is lab recognition scheme, which I handled in BIS for years, 2.5 years, which is based on annual accreditation. So you are safe there. BIS lab recognition is based on annual accreditation anyway. So you don't have to separately say that the lab should be annual accredited because they are actually accredited.
No, so suppose I'm in the private sector.
Yeah.
My product is taking a certification from BIS. I got the certification. My question is, my lab also should be accredited?
No,
by
there is no requirement. No.
But
Manufacturer's lab, there is no requirement for accreditation. I have not seen a single regulation which says that manufacturer's lab should also be accredited.
Now, if you want to make a trade from that particular unit, then your lab is mandated to get accredited, no? So that
No, there is no requirement. You are as a private sector person, the foreign regulator most likely will expect that your test report comes from a accredited lab. Independent
third party.
Third party lab, yes. Third party lab. Third party lab. I am emphasizing third party for a reason right now.
Suppose my lab is accredited, 17025, there is no need for me to go to third party, right? So because I have this.
Well, it depends. See, there is a problem. Okay, interesting question. If a manufacturer's lab is accredited to 1725, what does 1725 prove? 1725 proves that you are competent to test. Okay. But you are still not a third party lab, you are an interested party lab, you are a first party lab. In fact, some of you, if you have been reading the newspaper recently, FSSI delisted some labs, ITC, some 2, 3, 4 names were given. And I happened to have met CEO FSSI in the middle of this problem which was going on. And when he asked for my view, I gave him my view. I said, as a regulator, you should not notify a manufacturer's lab under your regulation because that's a first party lab, that's not impartial. That's the issue. He said, but the lab is saying we will not test our samples. So please keep us notified. I said, no, that's not the argument. The argument is you will end up testing a rival sample. That's not acceptable either. That's not acceptable either. It's not the question of you testing your own sample. It's also the question of your rival samples coming in there and being tested. And how do you assure impartiality? So they actually took out, which is a good decision. Unfortunately, when I said common, I said international best practice, not the international standards, and it's to me they are the commonly accepted practice rather than international best practice. One of the reasons is these kind of lapses or you can say anomalies in the standard. For example, I would have expected in the latest revision of 1725, which came in 2017, since we are so much now, we are so aware about accreditation, we are so aware about regulations relying on accreditation, using accredited lab, somebody should have put in a provision for impartiality there. Like it is there in inspection bodies. There is a type A inspection body, type B inspection body, type C inspection body. When the first regulator came to me, PNGRB, that we would like to use third party bodies, I said, please write in your regulation type A inspection body because that is third party, rest are not. So I wish somebody, ISO committee, had said that let's make type A as independent and type B as manufacturer or link. Third is link. I am a manufacturer, I set up another entity and I have a lab. It's no longer in part of me, but it's linked to me. That is a risk also. So manufacturer's lab is one kind, a manufacturer linked lab is another kind, and a totally independent lab is another kind. So I would have made 3 categories at least in 17,025. That's why I have reservations about ISO. ISO processes. Any other question? Yeah.
Sir, I am Ayurveda Singh from T-Board. Around 5-6 years back, the tea testing laboratory were empaneled under T-Board. But nowadays, integrated assessment is there from NABCB.
Yeah.
Sir, as on date, around 53 FSSI parameters are there from 40. So, it has been observed, if a lab is having facility to test only 30 parameters, but FSSI parameters are 53, so that should be accredited as a NABL accredited laboratory for tea testing.
Ramprasad, would you like to answer that question? This has been asked 100 times and answered 100 times. Would you like to answer or I should answer? Yeah.
So even they say there are out of 53 parameters, we are having 30 parameters.
Suppose 30 or
So in
35.
that case, you can get accreditation for the 30 parameter, but not FSS aggregation. As per FSS aggregation, should be full screen, complete.
Sir, yeah, you
So, okay, so let me elaborate on that. Please remember, first thing, that accreditation is a voluntary activity. Okay? As a voluntary activity, if I am a lab, I take accreditation where it suits me, my business interest, where it brings value to me. I will not take, if I am doing a test twice a year, I have a facility, but I am doing that test twice a year, why would I take accreditation and incur the cost? I don't want to incur the cost. So I will pick up the most used parameters and say, please accredit me for these parameters. So it's a voluntary activity. Regulator, even BIS, because I know this because we had BIS, we used to have this problem. BIS certifies product. So it wants that every test in that standard should be accredited. So what I did in BIS when I was handling lab electricity way back, I'm talking of 98, I said, all right, I devised a format. Here is, for example, a cement standard to IS 269. These are the 10 parameters written in that standard. I will tell the lab, you say you are unable accredited for cement testing, please fill up this 10 parameters, tell me which page, where is the accreditation for this parameter. And if they prove to me that they are accredited for all 10, I would approve them. So what FSI should do and what you should do is the same thing. If somebody wants to get notified by you, which is different from getting accredited by them, they may get accredited for 10 purposes. You are using for your own regulations. Then you should have a mechanism whereby you ask the lab, I want to approve you for product X, and product X has these A to Z requirements. Please demonstrate to me you are accredited for all A to Z, then I will approve you, otherwise I don't. Otherwise you get partial reports. Then you have a problem. So that call has to be taken by regulator, the user of the regulator. You should take that call. Or you tell, which I think is operating in a certain way, you tell NABL, have an arrangement with NABL, that when labs apply for food testing, you ask them a question. Are you applying for food testing? Do you intend to go for FSI or T-Board notification? If they say yes, then they assess them accordingly as per your regulations. And specifically mention in the report that we have assessed as per the requirements of the regulator.
Sir, sometimes
It's a solvable problem. It needs you people to sit down together and solve it.
sometimes it happens that list has been issued and listing the tea testing laboratory, and T-Board is not knowing what actually they are doing, how, on what parameters or on what basis they have been active.
See, if the accreditation certificate says that they are, capable of testing tea as per FSI regulation so and so completely, you should trust that accreditation that they have tested, they have assessed all the parameters. It's the way they have got their accreditation score, which also is solvable because it's freedom to them. All you need to do is actually sit down together. I find we are not sitting down together. I mean, you are struggling with a problem, you keep struggling, you keep wondering, you maybe even keep cursing NABL what kind of accreditation NABL does, but you don't talk. We are not talking to each other. I think there is a need for more dialogue.
It may be two ways. NABL can say T-Board.
In fact, I have a quarrel with NABL. I tell them, when I pass on some information to them, that look here, so and so person has now prescribed that NABL accredited tester board will be accepted. NABL should proactively go and talk to them. What is the requirement? How should we? Do we need to change something in our process so that we meet your requirement? NABL doesn't do that. And if you think it's a monopoly, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, people will come. That's another problem. Yeah.
Sir, we are talking about the NABL, but what about the situation wherein we have the multiple accreditation body? Because recently I saw an order from FSSAI wherein they have agreed for the another accreditation body. So how do you see that situation in India in terms of the
See, quite clearly there are two models around the world. One is, which is in fact legalized, mandated by Europe through 765 by 2008, that every country should have one single national accreditation board. They took a call. Why did they take a call? If you talk to them, they'll tell you. They took a call because at some stage the scrutiny has to stop. I mean, you can't have, Commerce Secretary being monitored by Minister of Commerce, Minister of Commerce being monitored by Prime Minister. Now who will monitor the Prime Minister? Somewhere it will stop. Somewhere the scrutiny stops. Europe took a call that this is too technical a subject and accreditation bodies are the last call. As far as custodians of conformations are concerned, they are accredited and that's it. Beyond that, no more scrutiny. So they decided legally we'll have one. So in Germany, 35 accreditation bodies merged into one. In Italy, 8 accreditation bodies merged into one. A whole lot of changes took place during that 765-2000. This is the regulation number 765 by 2008, which was effective 1st January 2010. On the other hand, there is US, purely driven by commerce and business. That's how US has been all its life. I mean, its government is also driven by private sector, frankly, if you ask them. They will unhesitatingly, argue the call of their manufacturer. Indian delegation will never do, because they will be accused of being partial to one manufacturer over other, etc. We know, we have all been in government, that we can't talk in terms of promoting one manufacturer. US does. I have seen in that. So they have these multiple accreditation bodies concept, and they are all private, incidentally. None of them government. Between these two models, there is a third model, which is not by design but by compulsion. The compulsion means accreditation is not such a lucrative business. So developing countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, even India for a while, would not be able to afford another, if the government set up the accreditation body, because nobody else would set up. Like standards body was also set up by government, because nobody else would set up a standards body. In Europe, standards bodies are private. In US, standards bodies are private. Because they say regulation is government's job, standards is private sector job. It's nothing to do with government. Government say out. They have a clarity of role in that sense. So this is the third model, where by compulsion there are single accreditation bodies, not because there is a law there. In India also we belong to that category. By compulsion there were only NABCB and NABL for a long time. But the possibility that somebody would come up with an accreditation body was always there. And now it so happens it has come up. And one accreditation body has gone ahead and taken international equivalence. It is the government which has to take a call. Does it want a single national accreditation body concept in India, or will it live with a multiple accreditation body concept? Accordingly, you have to decide which one is best.
Sir, can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure if you're aware, you probably are, that in the TBT committee, the whole membership has launched into this exercise of developing guidelines on conformity assessment. So, in a way, it reminds me of what was done, although I wasn't there a long time ago, for international standards and the 6 principles. And the guiding question for these guidelines is what elements to think about when you choose which conformity assessment procedure to use in different situations.
Yeah.
That's kind of the guiding principle. And the work has started. Anwar is leading a lot of the process, and there have been 2 or 3 drafts. But I'm curious if you got that question right off. What is it one should be thinking of, or what is missing in existing guidance, or what should not be duplicated? So, do you have any thoughts on that? I'm curious about.
See, as I said, I foresee that conformity assessment there will be never a single model. Quite clear. There will be multiple models of conformity assessment, and we have to live with that. And first principle would be risk. The risk of the product. But the problem with that is the risk of the product also has a national context, which also will add or subtract to the risk. For example, self-declaration works in Europe because there is a strong judiciary, strong market surveillance, comparatively, strong market surveillance, and strong product liability. Self-declaration in India will not work because we have none of these things. So a lower risk product in India will be classified as higher risk because we don't have the deterrence which is needed for self-declaration to succeed. I mean, we did actually try self-declaration in PPs in 2 years back, and we realized that it didn't work. That was tried not in regulation but in public procurement. So the context would change. Even the risk level of the product will change based on the national context like this. So it's a very difficult question, how risk is evaluated. So if the guidance is being produced, it must also take into account the national context.
Yeah, just to jump in, I don't want to interrupt, but risk is clearly up there in front, and it has most of the guidance is, I think, on the risk element of it. But then market surveillance comes as a separate category.
Yes.
And of course, that is also an element that one brings in. So what other elements? So, one thing I scratch my head about is the whole concept of quality infrastructure and the capacity a country has, which is linked to what you're saying. So maybe one has to look at the whole gamut of quality infrastructure and look at the capacity the country has, because that will also affect the choice of the conformity assessment procedure.
Yes. The state of quality infrastructure. I mean, for example, if we did not have labs for N95 masks in India, well, what regulation can we carry out? We don't have labs. So BIS came up with a viable idea that some manufacturers had complete labs. So they said, okay, we'll take your sample, take it to the other manufacturer's lab. We will test in our presence to ensure impartiality. So that's another factor. Cost of compliance will certainly be another factor. I mean, the status of industry would be another factor. If our industry is driven largely by MSME, then it becomes important for us to consider that factor. That large part of our industry is MSME. Informal, even informal, micro, informal. I mean, toys it's very hard to regulate. I mean, it's very hard to regulate food in India. I'm sure the people who are from FSI or Pramod was in FSI. It's very hard to regulate food in India. Every street corner has food being sold. How do you regulate? So the capacity to regulate, the resources available to regulate, all this will drive your. So FSI came up with a concept of registration below certain turnover and regulation licensing above certain turnover. So that was another way of tweaking conformity assessment by having a registration system below 12 lakhs per annum and above that licensing system. So there are more factors which will come into play other than risk.
Hello. So, some of the importing countries destinate the private labs in the exporting country to test. How do you see them? Yes, whether they have the right, they can say that testing to be done, but which laboratory to be tested, it is the prerogative of the exporting country, right?
No, it's not the prerogative of exporting country. It's the prerogative of my regulation, what I described. India has done that as well. We say that for electronics and IT products, it should be an integrated lab. Don't we say that? It's our prerogative. We are using that prerogative. And we are saying that if you want acceptance of your reports in our country, please be ready to accept our reports also in your country. It's a very legitimate negotiating position as far as trade is concerned. Now, if you decide to accept ILAC MRA signatory reports automatically in your regulation, yours fit will. Nobody is stopping you from that. And there are regulations in India where there is consideration given to, for example, in medical devices rules, the importers don't have to get their samples tested here. They can produce approvals abroad and they can still get approved by Indian regulator. So it's a regulator's call. It's a importing countries regulator's call on what regulation, or a domestic regulator's call on what regulation he prescribes and what he accepts, what he doesn't accept. So we can only argue After all, US is arguing with us, no, that please accept our reports and we are not agreeing. You can also argue with other countries, please accept our reports based on this. And see whether negotiation works or not.
As per the TBT article, that what is to be tested are the test is proved in the right way. Then who is testing is the not material.
No, it doesn't say so explicitly. It does in Article 6 of TBT, I think they make reference to accreditation as one of the means. One of the means is accreditation. If the regulator decides to approve labs by itself, nobody can stop that. TBT doesn't stop that. It doesn't say that you must have accreditation. Like, even Europe doesn't follow accreditation in everything. And there is resistance to using accreditation, especially in medical devices. There is resistance to, after the breast implant case, there is resistance among regulators to use accreditation and third-party bodies. Or they say, we will control the third-party bodies, we ourselves will regulate. So it's a country's call. As a sovereign country, it's your call what kind of regulation you decide. And the kind of regulation you decide, you should be prepared that that same kind of treatment will be meted out to you also. It's an interconnected word. So if you insist that all samples are to be tested in India, tomorrow US will insist all samples are to be tested in US. Now then you have to work out what is better for you, beneficial for you. Your industry getting samples tested in US is a better option, or allowing US to accept US reports so that our exporters don't spend so much money. Like what you get tested with 1,000 rupees here, you spend $1,000 there. That's the solve.
No. You were saying you have lots of questions?
Sir, बहुत से questions थे, but वो आपकी तरफ से थे, वो आप बोल रहे हैं.
No, plenty.
So I'll ask one, sir. It's like this, I've read this somewhere, but I don't recollect where exactly.
No.
There is this issue of a product failed, and the judiciary entering the arena, and then it charging the third party certifier a heavy penalty. So how will that play out in the overall scenario where third parties shy away from certifying products?
I don't think third parties will shy away from certifying. I mean, more and more regulations have come, more and more regulations are relying on third parties, and third parties are willing to take that bait and take that form. The
Cost of certification.
The fact is that every international standard on conformity assessment requires the third party bodies to have a liability insurance. It foresees this part, that you might someday be run into trouble in the course and may have to pay some compensation or something. So we do insist on every stage, certification body, laboratory, everybody has to have liability insurance. Even accreditation bodies. As NABCB, we had liability insurance. Unless we can show, for example, enough reserves, that we have enough reserves to take care of liability, or we can show that the government has agreed and given in writing that we'll take we'll underwrite it. So all third-party bodies are well prepared for liability because that's part of the whole system. Yeah, number one. Second, yes, they would take into account the risk involved in certifying a product. I know of a certification body which refuses to certify a good product because it's too much risky. We don't want to take the... And it's not only liability, it's sometimes reputational risk also. I mean, for example, we know construction industry, how construction industry operates in India. I mean, rules are followed in more followed less. So, as a certification body, I might decide that I don't want to certify construction because it's full of non-compliances, legal non-compliances. I don't want to get into that trouble. That tomorrow something happens in a building and then I am also hauled up because I certified for ISO 9001. So, that's a call certification bodies do take. I am aware of certification bodies who have taken that kind of call. That will not enter this sector or that sector because of the risk involved.
Sir, I have a question here. Abhishek from BIS.
Yeah.
Sir, my first point is regarding, as we discussed, the standard making procedure in as well as the other decisions in ISO are not consensus based. They are basically voting based. So there are different types of majorities that they employ.
If you are saying the final ballot which comes out.
Yes, I'm talking about the
voting based.
decision.
Technically voting based.
So it's,
but in the committees, hardly ever voting based.
Yes. So what happens, sir, is there are different types of majorities that they have defined: simple majority, effective majority. But most probably what happens from what I've seen, obviously you might have more experience. You have more experience than me.
No, I was, thanks to KS, I was in 2 committees.
Yes.
They also gave me an opportunity to have lunch a couple of times with Derek. I would go to Geneva to attend meetings.
So sir, in that, what I have observed from my limited study of the procedures as well as the balloting decisions that have been taken, what I have observed is, let us take an example of US. We talked about this, that the countries who develop their own standards somehow end up making, creating barriers for themselves if they are not following the ISO let us say international standards in these terms. So, in case of US, to be very specific, what US does is, US uses the least number of international standards. Even though it is part of most number of secretariats in the ISO committees as well as IEC committees, it uses least number of international standards proportionately. The usage of as well as the adoption as well as the harmonization of standards is very disproportionate. But still it is leading in export. That is one part. Same goes with China. And this is my point, sir. So what can we infer from here? Because as we said that...
What we can infer is US is smart. Simple. My inference is US is smart. It wants to influence international standard setting, so it has the most number of secretariats, it sends strong delegations. It wants to make sure that, what I observed in the 2 committees that I was part of. Every country's representative wants that the international standard should be the practice which is being followed in their country, so they have to change the least. Simple, very logical. If I am following a particular practice, I would like to put it in the standard and I am comfortable because I have to make no changes in my setup. So, if US does that, it influences the standards to make sure that the standards do not go beyond what they have internally. Track the cost.
Sir, exactly that is my point. That US does that and still it does not use those standards. So why should, your point was India should use those standards? And India should adopt or harmonize with those standards.
Its standards are usually maybe stricter than international standards. Please remember that. Higher than international.
No, they are not. In not most of the cases, sir, from what I have read, ASTM and as well as if someone is okay, ASTM standards are not stricter than ISO standards in some of the manufacturing product stages from what I have seen. And I have seen cases where Indian standards are more stringent than the ISO standards.
See, example of few cases does not include.
Sir, this goes both ways. This goes both ways. So that is what I am trying to get at. That if that is the case with US, why should we bow down? I am not talking politically. I am saying technically, technologically rather. We have had advancements. So why should we bow down and why should we just for the case of exactly harmonization as well as adoption is very much preferred, recommended too, yes. But why should we go down that route when our primary and I think the policy objective that the government or any sort of policy making body should have adopted and has adopted is we are supposed to take care of our first, the primary state of matter should be that we are supposed to take care of the manufacturers that are going on. Same with the hallmarking. The hallmarking, the IS 15820, according to which the hallmarking centers are recognized. Why that was made? From again, there is a different. There are different requirements which are difficult for a lot of hallmarking centers which are available, which are accredited as of today. So what happens is we will be able to export, but will not be able to maintain that amount of that number of centers that are present today in India. So what will be achieved with that?
So okay, to a very long question, some two points. One, when we are regulating safety, then we say that safety, a certain part of safety is non-negotiable. It can't be one level of safety in India, another level. And I think the most famous case was bottled water in 2003-2004 when CSE came out with a report and said our standards are lower than European standards and we had to revise our standards post-haste. So the question is safety open to being differential safety? One level of safety in US and another level of safety here because we are regulating safety largely. Second part is, well, we are also exporting pharma to 200 countries without following international standards, are we not? But are we able to prevent US FDA coming here and inspecting every plant of ours because we don't have our system is not equivalent, so we are not able to even talk to them. Now tell me, as an industry, I'll ask you a question. If a BIS, let's talk about BIS, if a BIS QCO is based on international standard, for example toys, or gold jewelry, which is an international standard, and as a manufacturer I am subject to your regulation, why should I not expect that this approval or regulatory approval from BIS should also provide me access to foreign market because I am meeting international standard? Why should I be expected to go for another round of approval separately, incurring that cost? So look at that. This is not a simple question of going to this or going to that. As an industry, I would certainly tell you what is this. I mean, you are making tires to, I am making tires to international standards. If I go to Ecuador says, please bring a certificate to National Accreditation Board. BIS is not accredited. Somebody asked, that's why I said park that question. BIS certification is not accredited, so half the places it's not acceptable. Why should BIS not be accredited? Why, when you are certifying to international standards, you are using international procedures, you are using a type 5 scheme as per 17067. Why should you not be accredited so that the exporter, the Indian domestic producer who is producing to international standards gets access to the other market because your certification is also acceptable? But he doesn't. So he has to now, I mean, how many people came to me in 2013 or 14 that Ecuador has put a notice now and their export stopped, their tire export stopped because Ecuador said certified by a certification body, accredited by the national accreditation body of that country. They were very liberal. They didn't say from accreditation from us. They said national accreditation body of that country. And people came to me and asked me, have you accredited anybody for tires? I said no. The tires is the mandatory certification. BIS does it, BIS is not accredited. So please look at variety of views before we come to any.
Just a second, sir. I'll just. So the point is, we have digressed a bit from the point. So our point was, as you said, it was not about accreditation of BIS. The point was regarding the as the certifying body. It was more about how can we reconcile the difference between the requirements of the other agencies as well as requirements of our own manufacturers. I think when we achieve that.
I mean, to me, the way to go is to adopt international standards. A, B, the way to go is to be more argumentative in international standards. Where do we participate? What is our participation? We hardly participate. Then we say, no, every time new person will go. Let everybody get a chance. What nonsense is that? I mean, when I go for international committees, I see there people sitting for the last 20 years talking about, 15 years ago this point came up and we had this discussion. I am watching, what the hell here? I don't know, 15 years ago. We need experts in international standard setting. We need continuity. Yeah. Unless there are experts who go 5, 10 years. I mean, it took me 5 years to get my voice heard in IEF time. It takes that much, 5 years when they see my face again and again and they listen to me again and again, then they recognize that there is somebody who is speaking something and speaking sense. Let's listen to it. It takes time. So there are a whole lot of issues around this. But to me, as far as I am concerned, from all my experience that I have, I would say our default position should be we adopt international standards. Our participation in international standards drastically needs to improve so that we can argue. And somebody was here from FSSAI, nobody's here. Somebody would remember how one of our experts, Praveen Ganga, Sivaj will know, argued in Codex, on Codex Assessor which was revised. Relentlessly argued in Codex for the small industry that what you are making will have a problem for us. We need those kind of experts. We are not sending.
So sorry, yeah, the gentleman from the keyboard, you can ask the last question. Keep it short.
Only last question, sir. Sir, we have during all these 3 days of deliberations, we have heard so much about the conformity assessment procedures and its efficacy in resolving trade disputes. Actually, from the practicality of its application, the CAP is one of the very important strands of the TBT negotiations. How it will be put to use for resolving trade dispute with the ultimate objective of having the hassle-free access to the markets. That is my point, and its linkage with the harmonization. Just 2 points.
See, I already told you that conformity procedures will not be a single model. There will be varying conformity procedure. So we should focus on the effectiveness in terms of, are we able to trust? Are we going to force every country to follow our model, or are we able to trust their model enough for their product to be accepted, and are they able to trust our model enough? I mean, we can't make everybody have a BIS type 5 scheme. They will not do it. So then you have to negotiate and find a way of accepting each other's certification and each other's conformity assessment. And not necessarily that they should be single. That viability would be through a negotiation.
One is, sir, there are no follow-up questions, please. I have to end this program here. Thank you, sir, for very much for